Hello, everyone. Happy Sunday. Welcome back. Welcome again. This is my third version of this. So hopefully you are joining in. We are glad that you're here. We are glad that you've come, and we are ready to tackle that July monthly setup. Being halfway through the year is wild. And as there's some illusion there, yes, today is my birthday, so I am not ready to fully acknowledge that July 1st, July is here, July 1st in general. So I am still hanging out in June, but we are going to work on July together. So I am Katie Gideon. I will be the on-camera facilitator. And I want to give a huge shout out to my co-facilitator in the chat, Maya, who you'll see we were here last night, but we are glad that you are here. I'm already seeing some of our returning socialers as well as some of the ones that I recognize from other socials. Welcome back. We're glad that you're here. Let me know if this is your first social or your first setup or your first social in a while. And you can put that in the chat so you can use the chat as much or as little as you want, but definitely double check that it is set to everyone. And if it just comes to hosts and panelists, that comes to just myself and Maya. Ooh, we've got some first time socialers and some after long hiatus. So welcome Lisa, Bethany, Christy, and Jessica. We're so glad that you're here. We always love new people. But I will give you just a little bit of a heads up. This can be a little bit of an overload of senses because I am going to be talking. I'm going to turn on some music. If I am too much, mute me, mute the music. The chat is going to be going pretty quickly, and you can always click on a message to slow it down and then scroll at your own pace. Or you can close the chat completely because we know that you're probably going to be wanting to work on your journal. You're going to get great inspiration from not only the slides, but the people in the chat. So don't get, I mean, it could be a little overwhelming, but just take a deep breath, work on it kind of one at a time. And you can always come back to these recordings. We'll include the YouTube link a little bit later. And at the same time, I would just say have your phone out if you are one of those for screen captures. If you're working on a laptop or a desktop, have that snippet ready to go to give kind of that inspiration. I know a couple of our folks have folders dedicated to slide examples and all those things. So thoroughly enjoyable. And as always, you can continue to share in the chat even as we continue to move forward through the pages. And then just let me know if I need to go back a couple slides when I go off camera, and we can go back and see all those because I'm definitely going to be throwing quite a bit of examples at you. And as always, our community guidelines: be kind and courteous to yourself and others, no promotions or spam, no hate speech or bullying, respect everyone's privacy. When we talk about the limit repetitive product and accessory questions, I was just chatting with Maya about this. We love those conversations. We love talking about stickers. We love talking about pens. We love talking about any of the other kind of apps that people are using that you want to connect on. Whatever tools are going to help you become accountable or make yourself more accountable, or things that are just fun that you think people here would enjoy, certainly include those. We just don't want it to detract from the social and kind of why you're here. So it's more of like that's why we kind of add that as a little bit of a disclaimer because we talk about our products as well. It's just the fact that we're here to do our setup, we're here to find the motivation, we're here to celebrate the wins, acknowledge some of those tougher moments, and then get ourselves set up and focused to tackle July. And then, as always, redirect customer care inquiries to our team, hello@silkandsonder.com. So I was starting to see that a couple folks, maybe their journal hasn't arrived quite yet. Definitely reach out to hello@silkandsonder.com because Maya and I have some information, but we do not have everything. And we certainly don't have access to the specific accounts for all the individuals here. And at the same time, you can certainly bubble up some of those things and definitely keep emailing if you need to. And then, as always, Sonder Socials are a tool to help elevate your emotional health through the power of community, but you are responsible for your own emotions, well being, and decisions. So, we're glad that you've come exactly as you are. But do not feel pressured to not celebrate the wins. If you had a great June, we want to hear about it. If you had a not great June, we want to hear about that too. But it's one of those things you should be leaving here. As Melissa just put, it's a happy space for everyone at these type of things. So we want you to leave happy. We want you to leave a little bit more optimistic and excited, even just a little bit of that kind of sigh of relief moment. So if you need to set up some mental boundaries or barriers, kind of say no to some of the prompts, then by all means do it. Take what you want, take what you need, because we're glad you're here. And so now diving into a new month, new theme, and July's theme is independence. I can't help but think of that band, the band Perry song, Independence. I'm a country girl at heart. So I think of that in Independence. And I really have had a little bit of a tricky time kind of finding ways to tie in independence and kind of maneuver it from the larger kind of societal independence and how can I make it about me? Because I feel like sometimes that's what we're here for. It's all about the self-care. How can we spark our own purpose? How can we find that own dynamic? And so I came across this quote with the essence of independence is to be able to do something for oneself. And I know there's a lot of times that we've got quite a few people pleasers here and that saboteur. And that can always be a little bit tricky to feel bad about taking time for ourselves. And I think it's one of those, I tie it absolutely into the purpose. During different chapters of your life and different milestones, your purpose changes. Your purpose includes other people, it includes other entities. And at the same time, at the end of the day, I think it's also the fact that we need to highlight that your purpose should still come from you. You need to kind of bring that authenticity. You need to be the one that kind of finds your own vitality. And therefore, I like the idea of independence as being able to do something for oneself, not only in that kind of capacity, but also finding the motivation to do it internally. And I think it ties in very well with Meha's letter on page 2. Highly recommend reading the letters. They're really great perspectives. And I'm one of those things I cannot relate to everything in the letter, but I can usually pull some things that I find that resonates with me. And the first one is that kind of owning my decisions, trusting myself, and creating space for the things that truly matter. I feel like there is a luxury and a joy in being able to call that independence, where you're able to kind of, again, stand on your 2 feet, explain yourself, be able to articulate all those things, take control of your narrative, as well as find the courage and enthusiasm to do that. And then I know another thing that a lot of folks have been working on this year for sure is the saying no to things. It is the protecting their space, protecting their time, protecting their energy. And so I think under independence, it's a great opportunity to celebrate the courage to create those boundaries and to say no. So I always look for a great way to celebrate something, find something that I'm kind of already doing and embrace that, but also then find things that I can make just some subtle adjustments to. And I like the other perspective of, much like Reba McEntire's song, is for me, independence was always, as a kid growing up, I need to break away from my parents and be able to kind of function out there alone and unafraid and able to kind of take on the world. But I thought this was a really great point is that independence isn't about isolating yourself. And that was a reminder that I needed because, little stubborn me wants to do everything herself. So I have been focusing on delegation and kind of those things. And so the idea that it isn't about isolating yourself, it's about creating the space that you can set your boundaries, you can say no, you can own your decisions, you can trust yourself, and you can kind of make room for all the things that really matter to you, or how you can then show your best self to those around you and provide that support that they need. So those are kind of my thoughts on independence. And I'm seeing that in the chat, some of you are kind of putting your thoughts and ideas in there. And so love to see that. Please continue to do that as we move through. And so we're going to start out with that a monthly acrostic poem. Then we're going to do our June reflections, our July intentions, and then hopefully help support those intentions with those mood and habit trackers. And so a little bit of a disclaimer, I am one of those people that uses my journal to kind of knit and support each other. So I like to make sure that I have my general idea and what other pieces can I bring in to give it a little bit more strength, to provide it a safety net, to add a little bit of, options. I'm not a all eggs in one basket type of person. So any way I can help support them and any way I can connect the sections, I do. But just because that is what I do does not mean that is what you do. Maybe you need to keep all of these little things separate because you need some, you want some, and you may utilize others. So just keep that in mind, especially as I provide examples. So please join me on page 19 in your July journal. And so we're going to work on that acrostic poem. And so this is your opportunity to fill in kind of your initial thoughts in poetic form. And poetic form can be the long, very creative nuances there. It can rhyme. You can pull out your inner Shakespeare on the iambic pentameter scale, or you can just use it as kind of motivational words and phrases that work for you and your relationship with independence. This is absolutely an opportunity to brainstorm. And so this is what it looks like, but I will absolutely admit this was tricky for me because it is a long word, but it's like the same 5 letters. It was one of those, I struggled with finding an E word. And so I do find those a little bit more challenging. And Bailey had some really great advice. Maybe with a word this long, you kind of come to a couple letters each week just to focus on it. But I had to scrape the E word barrel for this. So I also included the definition from the journal, as well as someone yesterday repurposed and kind of found a connection to freedom instead of independence. So instead of doing an independence acrostic poem, they did a freedom one. And then I'm already seeing that some of you are using our AI coach, Jenny, for some of the inspiration there. I've also used some AI generated one. So I think that can be really helpful, especially to at least get those words started. And you guys provide such amazing examples in the app. So I've included these there really just to help with the words. So I'm going to give you some time to work on this and we will see you soon. So again, page 19, and we'll see you soon. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. You guys have come up with some really great acrostic poems. And then, just as a reminder, if the acrostic poem isn't for you on page 19, then you have the opportunity to turn to a blank page, write a letter saying goodbye to June or hello to July. You can also revisit your independence definition, which can be found on page 3. And then you can always incorporate kind of other thoughts and feelings around how you maybe celebrated your independence. Like I said, I'm a big fan of identifying ways to celebrate either some of the routines you've already established, even just the attempt. As you said, I find this one a little bit challenging just because of the repetitiveness of the letters. But if you give it the good old college try, I think that is sometimes worth exploring as well as encouraging because I would not necessarily consider myself much of a writer, but I always get some satisfaction with completing these. So please continue to share in the chat as you wish those different prompts, even as we move forward. So now we're going to get into the monthly setup pages. And so please join me on page 8 with the June reflections. So this is an opportunity for us to reflect on June. And keep in mind that with those, again, mental barriers that we maybe need to set, because this shouldn't make us feel bad about it. It is a privilege and an opportunity to acknowledge what occurred in June. And I like the ability to be able to call out the wins. And so those are the things that went well, that made you happy, that were a highlight, made you smile. It was an accomplishment, as well as in the same section showing those challenges, something that maybe didn't go as well, out of your control, the stumbling blocks or the frustrations. I in particular have noticed that a lot of my challenges tend to be a lot of my maybe mental and emotional falterings. So I have found that really interesting. So maybe that's a trend that you notice. And I always am curious, was I able to fill out the wins pretty quickly and rapidly and confidently? Or did those challenge take center stage the entire time? Because I think that's also a good tool. And at the same time, you can use your calendar, your phone, any of these things. Or if you have your June journal with us because you were with us last month, you can look at some of those rosebud thorns or the to-do list to include some of those wins, the favorite moments. But what I also like is so many of you find and acknowledge the challenges, but you then kind of present it as this is what I can learn from. And so that leads us to that bottom section of this page that I all then like to do with that. What do I want to start, stop, and continue? Because sometimes you can get some momentum or motivation from those wins and challenges, and those can turn into the things that you want to start, stop, or continue. So I do like to acknowledge some of those things that maybe I would rather leave in June to then carry into July. But it is certainly an opportunity to kind of take all of those pieces together and decide, are you going to let the door hit it on the way out? Or did you have a pretty good June and you kind of want to carry that forward into July? And so, what I also like with that start, stop, and continue section is you can take it a little bit further with asking the why. Why do you want to start, stop, and continue something? By asking yourself why, it gives it a little bit more strength and a little bit more power. And then you can take it another step and ask the how. Because once you start, stop, and continue ideas, those whys can help support the July intentions that we're going to set up a little bit later. And then the how is going to be maybe things that you can do to accomplish it that can be incorporated into that habit tracker, or that can be translated into the weekly setups or the weekly spread pages. And again, just because there are all those extra lines, embrace the white space if it's not what you need. You can have maybe a couple things, but it does not diminish the type of month that you have. Sometimes it is just letting it kind of, I'm one of those people, I can't sit in silence too long. So I've had to embrace the white space a little bit more. Same thing with I always want to go in and change something. So I think it's nice to kind of acknowledge that sometimes as well and give ourselves a little bit of a break. So here are more versions of the what, the why, and the how. You can turn these into kind of large abstract ideas, or you can turn them into very, very specific, almost bullet style to-do lists. And again, stickers can always be included. And then I like the one at the bottom because they have identified what they want to start, stop, and continue at the bottom of the section. But then they broke down the specific hows in each of the weekly plans. So the month ahead, we know that there are a few extra days in July, but we're going to turn them into 4 weeks for the mind maps. So maybe these are things that can help for those specific weeks. So you can break it up into 4 sections so you can carry over those so that future you doesn't have to think too hard on some of those weekly setups because you kind of already have a plan in place that's going to help support those intentions. So I'm going to give you some time to work on our June reflections. As always, we love to celebrate the wins and acknowledge the challenge by providing that extra love and support so that you do not feel alone. But we are really excited to kind of see what you have and certainly curious as to maybe what you want to start, stop, and continue as we move into July. So we'll see you soon. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. It certainly is one of those that, with this type of reflection, you certainly see the ups and the downs and everything in between of the month. But I do love that it was Janet, I think, that mentioned that she had kind of really focused on the glimmers and was able to see a lot more of the wins instead of the challenges. And so sometimes that helps us just with the kind of, I'm one of those, I think attitude is everything. I know it sounds cheesy, but I think it's one of those, it's just how you kind of alter it or approach it. You can see things a little bit differently, a different lens. It doesn't necessarily change everything, but being able to adjust your perspective to kind of either learn from it or acknowledge it. I think there's something very powerful of just acknowledging that this is the variables that have been thrown my direction. And so, again, just because I mentioned that I find help in the start, stop, and continue to carry over into the intentions, please continue to work on the page at your own pace. And you don't have to have everything completed before we move on to that next section. Just keep that in mind, just because, one, usually these take quite a bit of time. So do not feel rushed. This is just here to, again, set aside some time to focus on you, as well as get some of that inspiration or just some of that kind of really nice like feedback, putting things out into the world that just make you feel a little bit better, a little bit lighter. And that's where we're at. So now we're going to tackle page 9 in your July journal. So these are those July intentions. And we have these 6 categories that are presented. And so you can embrace the idea of independence to set your intentions. And that can either be as the motivation or maybe the celebration of. You can focus on a particular theme or a category. You can use the name of song or lyrics that inspires you, quotes, all of those things. And then stickers, colors, images. If you can't quite come up with the words, maybe the stickers will help because, as we know, pictures are worth 1,000 words. So you can use that to kind of help motivate you. Or, like I said, you can build directly from those start, stop, and continue ideas directly into the intentions. And another idea is if maybe you're not quite set on the theme of independence, but you can maybe start to incorporate some of the other national events. It's National Grilling Month, National Peach Month, National Ice Cream Month, and I am highlighting the ones that make me happy. And so maybe you can kind of incorporate some of those activities around it. I was saying I'm from Oklahoma originally, and so the Porter Peaches, which we absolutely turned it into ice cream a few times. So I love all of those. And we have some independent retailers in the chat. Excellent. So definitely highlight yourself and celebrate that. Maybe you need to focus on, that kind of, you can prioritize some of those independence and that capability. So finding that, splitting the balance between your personal as well as your retailer opportunities. But that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that, Becca. And at the same time, just because, ooh, and we got more. Sam, love it. This is amazing. This makes me really happy because I love when these really absolutely resonate with people. So thank you for sharing. And then again, just because you have these listed 6 categories, you can absolutely make adjustments to those. And Kelly, another independent, excellent, love it. And then same thing with physical health. Maybe you want to focus on your mental health, your heart health, maybe even just summer health. I mean, I'm a summer fan. I know not everyone is a summer fan, so incorporating all those. All the shout out to the entrepreneurs. Excellent. Same thing with the professional goals. Maybe you want to focus on learning goals, summer goals. Maybe this is where we focus on the independent retailer goals, kind of those ideas there as kind of something a little bit more specific. I love a good duality. I love the idea of having something and then on the teeter-totter end of it, the opposite. So the do and the let go, I think is a great approach. More of something, less of something. And at the same time, I'm big on kind of action items, but for every action, we need to set aside that time to rest and refresh in order to minimize potential burnout. So if you do come up with that action item, what is going to be your rest and refresh in that capacity? Other things, again, love this idea of not having to commit entirely to these because past me has been really super great when it comes to the intentions. They look amazing, they feel amazing. And then about week 2 of the month, I was like, what was I thinking? These don't make sense. This is not what I want. This is not helpful. And I want to completely redo it again. So bringing in those sticky notes can be a little bit helpful, or if you have a kind of longer term project that you want to focus on. And so you can kind of carry these sticky notes throughout the year to each of those various journals. And you'll also see a smattering in each of these, the small tweaks to the category types. And again, the idea of embracing something and releasing something. I like I call the Hansel and Gretel reference. You're going to hear me use that a lot. And that's where we've laid the breadcrumbs for ourselves. So in this one, they have the different intentions that they want to feel, how they're going to work on it. So that's kind of the grounding element. And then the particular habits that they can carry over into the habit tracker or the weekly habits and activities to support those work on ideas as well as how they want to feel. So you can certainly ask yourself that question. Here again, stickers are never not an answer. Stickers are always great. I saw that some people were working in the digital version, so I like the digital element of this because I think the color palette is amazing, but it's also being able to incorporate kind of those things in a couple different forms. So if the pages are still working with you, definitely reach out for the digital. It's really great if you want to travel, but there are some limitations on which apps can use it. And then these are the two that I also really appreciate is so the overall goal with the one on the left is that they're wanting to reduce stress. So they've completely changed the categories of how they want to do that. And then they've come up with their affirmation or their mantra, and then that actionable item too, with the overall end goal of reducing stress. So you can look at a larger goal and breaking it into 6 different pieces or 6 different components. And then if you've been to one of my socials before, especially on the monthly setup side, I am obsessed with the idea of manifesting it or looking into the crystal balls. I love the ability to kind of intentionally and optimistically take control of your month, take control of your week, take control of your day. So then for me, it just gives me that added boost of confidence to take on whatever variables change or whatever the day, the week, or the month is going to bring to me so that I just feel like I can handle just about anything that's going to be thrown in my direction. So I'm still trying to figure out a way to do this outside of the crystal balls. For June, I did do birthday cakes, as in blowing out the candles for the wishes for it. But I just love that idea of being able to turn it into a statement period versus something that it's again more of this like larger idea or something kind of a little less definitive. So, I'm going to give you some time to work on these intentions. I would certainly love what type of ideas are you coming up with for the intentions? Are you changing any of the categories? Are you repurposing some of those sections? And we will see you soon while we're working on page 9. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. I love seeing the different intentions as well as the different repurposing of the categories, or at least taking the categories idea to kind of another step. So thank you, everybody, for sharing. So now that we have our intentions, this you can certainly see this as kind of the end goal of the month. And another way that we can kind of help support this end goal is with the mood and habit trackers. Because again, sometimes it's best to ask yourself what you need this month or what you need to help yourself with these intentions. So maybe what you need is the mood and habit trackers written exactly as they are, or maybe you need them to look a little bit different. So I am a big fan of the mood tracker. This is on page 10 in your July journal. We know we always have the team circles and the team not circles, which are called hexagons. I will never forget that now. And so you have the opportunity to choose 6 different moods, and you can choose some of the lesser positive feelings, some of the more neutral ones, and some of the positive feelings for that in that capacity. I know some people will leave a couple of them blank and kind of fill those in as they go, because I absolutely have been in that position where I've picked some really random moods and then was like, yeah, I'm not feeling those. So giving yourself a little bit of the opportunity there, as well as I know meh has become a great one because that's the like quintessential gray space, kind of in that idea. You can still continue to focus on that theme. And so you can fill in every emotion that came up that day or fill in whatever emotion was the strongest. And again, we do like the idea. Hannah, I love that question because I have some other repurposing ideas. But before we get there, here is again that traditional feelings wheel. Because as the example I have always used is that I initially started with like the really, really strong emotions, and I am one that definitely fixates on the negative because I am a glutton for punishment in that regard. So I always try to figure out what I did wrong, how I can fix it. So I definitely fixate on the negative. And so I was putting myself on this roller coaster because I was able to sit and continue to acknowledge the negative, but also try and swing it back to the more positive. So I was getting a little worn out with this roller coaster. So I started to pick ones that I considered a little bit more closer to neutral. So instead of ecstatic or all of the kind of ecstatic ones. It was going to be like, well, I'm content. And I felt that kept me a little bit more on an even keel. So I certainly appreciated the idea of tracking those moods. But I would certainly say I definitely haven't really been tracking my moods to that same extent. I have certainly tried to repurpose it. And if the circle version is not quite your style, I saw that someone else was a little bit of a linear thinker. So maybe this can be a little bit more helpful if we put it on a graph. And that's because I like the idea of the low energy and the high energy emotions. So maybe picking it from that perspective. So again, you can kind of help manage this roller coaster that you're on, or even settle into, I'm a big fan of, I believe the color, the kind of coloration with it. So I do always associate the high energy with those warm colors. So your reds, your oranges, and your yellows. Whereas maybe, yes, low energy, the calming colors, as I like to call them, with those blues and teals and greens. So a lot of my house decor is on the cool tone side to help kind of relax me. So I always think that's a really interesting tie that you can add to it, especially if you track using markers, colored pencils, or colored pens. And then when it comes to ways to repurpose, so not only does this template provide a really good way to include multiple variables to see if there is a correlation, so you can kind of monitor if I am feeling this mood, it may impact my energy. And so you can kind of start tracking those things, or you can turn it into maybe you're wanting to focus on anxiety, depression when you're working with a professional. Or again, you can kind of come up with others, whatever scaling mechanism you want to use. So here are those examples. So again, the one at the top left was panic attacks. So it was acknowledging a heavy to a none, being able to track those because then you can use that data at the end of the month to kind of see what type of trends you had for the full month. Because again, some of us tend to focus a lot on the negative. And so being able to kind of take those and then use it to see that maybe you didn't have nearly as many of the negative as you thought you did. And then we have the one with the different emotions, and that they experienced kind of the different ones with the different colors. So they incorporated multiple emotions per day. You can certainly include the days of the week because again, I feel like the general assumption is that everyone feels great on a Friday going into the weekends. But there are definitely times where my Monday has overpowered my Friday because I've just really stacked my weekend and I start to almost dread it a little bit. So being able to kind of look at it from that perspective as well, talking about the multivariable options. So the one at the bottom with the emotions over the energy, and then being able to say, well, I had medium lead, high energy or low energy, depending on the color of the flower at the bottom. And then maybe you want to turn it into a physical care tracker, a mood boost tracker. So the things that you want to do there. The activities tracker, so incorporating maybe summer activities or routines, kind of incorporated in that way, or kind of self-care activities. The one on the bottom right, I appreciated because they brought in the months, and that was how you were feeling. If you were feeling June, you brought out some of the, kind of brighter colors. You had some kind of nice, refreshing lemonade, but maybe if you were feeling a little bit more October, December, because it's July, if you do celebrate Christmas, Christmas in July is always fun. So maybe you wanted more of the warm teas and the hot chocolates and kind of sitting with the like cozy fall or cozy winter movies or TV shows. Thought that was a really fun way to embrace it. And then maybe you on a particular healthcare goal, so you're looking at different type of foods, or even like a symptom tracker. The bottom left one was the anxiety tracker that I know Bailey used probably ages ago. Then maybe checking on your energy tracker. Is it zapping your physical, your mental, your emotional, your sensory, your social, or your creative energies? Kind of embracing that seven types of rest. And then I love the intentions tracker. So if you had maybe not, if you maybe didn't meet your expectations when it came to utilizing your June journal or journals in the past, we just completed 6 intentions. So this is an opportunity to carry those intentions over here and make sure that you're building into your routine, revisiting those intentions so you can kind of either plan ahead for those intentions or do it kind of as you go, just making sure that you're checking in with those intentions on a regular basis. You can also use it as a book tracker, another iteration of a mood tracker with, again, were you feeling positive, productive, sick, or pain in association with those moods. You can take the inside out plan, which is the bigger the bubble, the bigger the emotion, but still incorporating all of the emotions for that day. And then again, some of our independent retailers, independent entrepreneur types. Leanne is one of those independent business operators, and she turned hers into a business habits. So instead of the mood tracker, because she had her separate kind of habit tracker that was used for her personal goals, she turned this one into a professional goal and incorporating a lot of those things of how she was going to help her business in that capacity. And then spending tracker, always a good one. And certain types of the year, maybe it's a self-care tracker or even the acknowledgement of just a tough day versus a great day. Goes back to kind of Janet focusing on those glimmers each time. So again, realizing that you may have a few more great days than you thought. You just tend to focus on maybe the lesser of those days. So being able to look at those at the end of the month to acknowledge that, I think can be really helpful because then you can start setting some of those boundaries, maybe finding that courage to say no in that capacity. So I'm going to give you some time to work on this tracker and we will see you soon. Thank you, everyone. So now that we have that version of the tracker, and again, you can absolutely use it as the mood tracker. And I loved that Daisy pointed out that she loved the emotions she picked a long time ago, and then being able to recognize them at the end of the day. So she's attached it to single words that kind of help with that. So this is another one of those things that you don't always have to come up with something new, different, earth-shattering. What I appreciate about these trackers is that they're definitely there to help support routines, establishing routines, continuing routines, acknowledging routines. And so, with that idea, let's move to the habit tracker on page 11. So, I can definitely consider myself a creature of habit. There are the same three habits that I have established at this point, ages ago, it seems. And that is, I want to move every day, I want to read every day, and I want to journal every day. And that took some kind of getting to because I used to be really, really specific. And I felt myself falling short and I was beating myself up about it. So I kind of brought them out to a little bit more general. And then I carry over those things because those are the things that I want to do every single day. I then carry over those three habits into my habits and activities on my weekly spread. And that's when I add how much time can I realistically devote to those three habits. And so you can obviously use independence as the focus idea. So maybe those are some of the habits you want to work on. You can pick a theme. You can obviously continue habits from previous months, again, celebrating that routine. But then we always recommend to maybe find a balance. And again, just because you have all of these lines does not mean you need to use them, but it is an opportunity for us to embrace maybe the setting the boundaries and saying no of that idea that may have brought up in the earlier letter on page 3. And so here are some other habit ideas that you can certainly use if you just need some inspiration. I am absolutely focusing a little bit more on the hydration element just because I haven't been sleeping as well. Because I'm not sleeping as well, I've got lower energy and I've been reaching for more of the caffeinated drinks instead of water. So I am adding a fourth habit for that, and that's hydration, hit my hydration goals each day. And so again, a lot of these can be a bit similar, but here are some of the kind of examples that I've shown. And so you again can embrace that colorization. But what I like about the one on the left is acknowledging that there are things that eventually are going to be out of your control. In this particular situation, the COVID impacted obviously their routines and their habits and their activities. So I feel like that is something that you can acknowledge and give yourself that grace if that is just not what you need that day. You need to feel better, you need to get better, you need to get healthy. So some of those habits may not quite reach it across the finish line. And then the one on the right, again, you can include what days of the week for each of those, because sometimes your habits are going to look different during the weekdays versus the weekends. And sometimes, this month may look a little bit different if you're an educator or if you have school-age children or even college-age children coming back. So you may, and that could be one of those you're absolutely rely heavily on that habit tracker to keep your routines going, even when all these other variables are introduced. Or you have vacation plan, and that's where you want to give yourself a break. Myself in particular, I don't track my habits on those vacations. Want to be a little bit more present, but a lot of those things I already kind of inherently do. So that's why I like to pick those in that capacity. And then when we talk about what is the numbers that were given there, the individual just kind of came up with their own legend and their own criteria for those and kind of either did it with how they did it, how many times they did it, or even their satisfaction to it. So being able to kind of creatively think of that instead of just either marking it off or coloring it in. You can again, don't have to use all of the lines and you can focus on very specific things. So the one on the left, they have their morning routine and their afternoon or evening routine. And then you have the mandalas, which can be as intricate as you want. And I think that's also a great visual at the end of it to see how much you accomplished. I would not quite be able to use the mandala because all I would focus on would be that white space. So I always try to look at ways that's going to make me feel a little bit better, even when I potentially fall a little bit short. And then in the continuations with the using the mood tracker to track your intentions to connect with your journal, the habit tracker on the left actually is kind of what I would consider a journal habit tracker. because they've included the dailies, which a lot of those can be found in the Silk and Sonder app with the daily affirmation, daily reflection, daily rituals, as well as making sure that they work on their gratitude log. They check in with that other tracker, as well as focus on those weekly habits and goal achievement. So that's another one of those you can help your future self in that capacity. And then same thing with the one on the right. You can also incorporate here are my larger habits that I want to do, and here are the options within those things that you can do. So when you want to do physical care, you already have it broken down into, well, I can move my body, I can stretch, I can take a long shower, and I can do a mind body check in for each of those each day. Maybe you want to focus on celebration or again, the theme of independence. Another creative way to track all of the different things that you're focusing on. So the one on the right is a little bit more heavy on kind of a healthcare journey, very specific. And you guys know me and my iconography. So I have repurposed my usually sleep tracker or expense tracker. This month it's going to be the expense tracker for my adventure list and my bucket list of things that I just think are fun. And it helps me kind of add a little bit of magic and spontaneity into kind of my day because a lot of things are already being done. But it's really fun to call it a bucket list or an adventure list. And the one on the right, the how to deal with nice day guilt. I feel like this one I get called out a little bit as well. And that's just because when it's a really nice day, I feel like I got to be outside. And sometimes that's just not the best thing for me. And it's not the best thing for whatever I have planned. So this is another one of those for those non-summer girlies, maybe, to kind of just help support the um, nice day guilt. And so I'm going to give you time to finish up this page and we will see you soon. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. And I appreciate the conversation of kind of other reframing or other things to consider as we embrace this month's theme of independence. So now that we have completed all of those pages, can you believe we have reached the end of this social? So, as always, we would love to continue the conversation in the Silk and Sonder app. Please share your pages if you would like. We love seeing all of those amazing examples, and it is a great way to keep yourself accountable because at the same time, I like the idea of being able to share the inspiration from each and every one of you. I learned something new at each of these socials, so I appreciate everyone who comes as well as those that share their creative ideas and amazing opportunities in the best way possible. And for a mid-year option, we are offering a 14-day free trial, no risk, with the AI coaching Jenny. You can use the QR code there as well as Maya is including some of those links in the chat. This is certainly a new feature. It is a feature that Meha is very excited and very proud of. So if you haven't tried it or you want to check it out or you're interested, please, please, please do. We know a lot of our folks truly enjoy it and is certainly very helpful. So if you have any additional questions, please reach out to concierge@silkandsonder.com. And then this is a copy of my playlist. I will include my Spotify link in the chat. Maya has also included the YouTube videos there. But again, maybe it's a spoiler alert. This weekend has been me, Maya, and Bailey. So the YouTube videos, there should be some slight variation to the three different monthly socials. But to be fair, I hosted three of them. And so you will see Maya and Bailey later today. And then if you join us for a weekly social tomorrow, I will be back in the hot seat. But thank you everybody for joining us. We were so glad that you're here. You guys are going to have an amazing rest of your day, an amazing rest of your weekend. Let us get prepared. Come July 1st for July to begin. So we hope to see you at future events. And I hope you have a great day. See you soon. Bye.